mother had died and I hadn't seen her for years and all the rest of this kind of stuff, I ended up in basically the ghetto of New York City. This was before New York City was a fancy place to get your lattes. I was basically a graffiti artist living practically on the street. My father had a stroke. It was like, this was my life. I did anything and everything to heal that and to handle that. I ended up in the University of California, Santa Cruz, studying psychology, and I became a hippie. Having a period of being a hippie was a really great resolution for this kind of troubled past. Now, in between those two stages, I had a bar mitzvah.
I married a nice Jewish boy.
Right? Alicia always wanted a Jewish doctor. I wasn't a doctor, but I was Jewish, so she married a Jewish guy. Now, you might notice from this picture, it's why we selected this picture, I was a nice Jewish boy, but I had a drug problem. I was stoned during my bar mitzvah, okay? So, but my point is, I did anything and everything to heal my issues. So I ended up in some very strange places. I did every workshop and seminar. I joined cults. I joined communities. I did everything. Now, it was a day. It was kind of early evening, so sort of evening, but early evening. I went to this group. And I went to this group because I was doing anything and everything. My friend Scott had invited me. He was with me. He drove me, actually. So we drove together. We showed up. We live in San Francisco. This was in Glen Park in San Francisco. And we got to this group. And it was supposed to be a group. And, we're knocking on the door. And nobody answers. So we start to leave. Then a limousine rolls up. And this limousine is a really big limousine, and it's purple, but the kind of lipstick purple. So it's more than purple, it's like the color of lipstick. So this lipstick-colored limousine rolls up, and the doors, all four doors, open at once. And these four beautiful women come out of the limousine, and like Scott and I are like, wow, this is great, right? Like, where are we? And then this really short guy, about 4.5 feet tall, his name ended up being Junior, he comes out of the limousine too, and Junior is completely drunk. He's like falling out. The women are like tall and elegant, and this 4.5-foot-old guy is just like rolling out of the limousine. And we say, we thought there was a group here tonight. Obviously, there's not. We're going to go. And they're like, no, come in. He's just telling us to come into the event. Like, well, there's nobody here. What's the event? He's like, come in. And then they take us out into their backyard, Scott and I, and all the women get naked. And Junior gets naked. And they all jump into the hot tub. So Scott and I get naked, and we jump into the hot tub. And it's kind of all fun. It's not an event. Like tonight in this event, we're going to teach you something like that. This wasn't an event. This was like a drunk guy and 4 hot women in a hot tub. And then something really weird happens. Junior reaches behind him, and he, believe it or not, this is true, he grabs a gun, a shotgun, and he starts to aim at the little squirrels or raccoons or gophers. I don't know what the heck they are. And he starts shooting multiple ones of them. And Scott and I are like, we're nervous at this point. But, there's all these really hot, sexy women in the hot tub also. So it's this really weird mix of like really sexy, and then there's Junior right? In the hot tub. And then there's me in the hot tub, right? So it's like, my point is I went to some really strange places to learn stuff. And I learned some really good stuff. And tonight, we're going to give you the good stuff minus Junior. And we're going to add in the love, like what came from the yoga ashram and the Zen monastery. So tonight is like a jam-packed session of love of the heart, your heart, our hearts, meets sex. We're including sex. Sex is the ultimate. Sex is how being, life, spirit, creates more beings. Right? So really letting yourself sense that, really feeling that.
So I remember discovering sex in my teens, like many of us did. And my boyfriend in high school, he was like my high school sweetheart. His name is Rob. So he and I had had some sexual experiences separately before we met each other. But we had each never had intercourse before. And it was like, the ultimate, right? It was so tempting and exciting. And I remember we planned it. We were sitting one night at Fatburger with some of his buddies from the soccer team. And like, we were sitting at our own table, like across from each other. He's like, okay, so I think we should do it like next weekend because my parents are going to be out late and like, you should come over. And I'm like, okay, I was so excited. And so I showed up in my, like for a sleepover, right? And I had my like flannel black and white checkered pants on, and we did it, and we had intercourse, and it was beautiful and amazing. And then I was hooked. Sex was the ultimate. There were a few times, one time in particular, where he and I were talking on the phone really late at night, and my parents were asleep and his parents were asleep, and he was like, I'm just going to come over right now. And I was like, yeah. And I climbed out of my window and I ran up the street in my socks and my pajamas to meet him where he was driving down the hill in his truck because we were going to have sex. It was that exciting, that ultimate.
It's a sacred part of life. It's really important. Now, it's also, when we include it, it's an amplifier, because sex not only is fun and erotic, it's a very intense energy. It's a vital energy. It amplifies whatever you bring to sex. So if you bring a relationship and you add sex, it's a really intense, interesting, great relationship, like our relationship. Or if you bring it to healing, or you bring it to anything, it has an amplifying kind of effect.
So one time, this is when I was first dating Erwan, okay? And I went to a yoga class. Now, I liked yoga, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I was the kind of person, when I would go to a yoga class normally, I would kind of like chill in the back of the room, in the back row, and just kind of do child's pose whenever, and like roll around and kind of keep up with the class. This one day, Erwan and I had an extended orgasm date. Some of you know what that is, some of you don't. It's a clitoral stroking practice. It's awesome. My sexual energy was on fire, okay? So this is an extended orgasm date. More on that later. So I walk into my yoga class and I am on fire. My vital energy is coursing through my body. I march right up to the front row, lay down my mat, and I'm like ready. And I was doing all the poses like fully. You know that pose, scorpion pose, like where you kind of put your forearms on the ground and then you kick up into this inversion and it's all crazy. Usually during that I would be like, gotta do child's pose. But that day, I seriously looked like I belonged on the front page of Yoga Journal, okay? I was full on in that yoga pose. And I'm telling you, the vital energy coursing through my body made that a totally different kind of yoga class.
Is not only fun, but it's also healing. It's also necessary. It's an integral part of yourself, to your well-being. Now, it's also an integral part to not only your physical well-being, but also your emotional well-being. So when we say sexual healing, the alchemy of sexual healing, we're not just talking about your body. We're talking about your heart. We're talking about your psychology. We're talking about your mind. Okay? So what I'd like you to do, we're building tonight. Tonight is building. So, stay with it because we're building. And I'd like you to really feel your sex drive, right? Whatever that means to you. Feel your sex drive. Really sense it in your body, really open to it. Your inner critic, your mind, your superego, that's a psychological term, might have rules against, don't be so turned on. Like if you're a woman, don't be so turned on, don't feel that. Or if you're a guy, don't show it, whatever. But we're inviting you tonight to really feel it, really sense it, really open to your sex drive. It has something to do with your pelvis. We've already opened that center. Kind of feel that. And notice that it has an impact on your mind. It has an impact on your heart. Something starts to happen. This vital energy starts to move. This is experiential.
It's nice. We're all here together, and this is a safe space. You're in the comfort of your own home, your living room, your bedroom, wherever you are. It's okay. You can really let yourself feel.
Feel your heart. Maybe your heart is wounded. My childhood left me with a very wounded heart. I had to feel my wounded heart. If your heart is wounded, feel that. If your heart is numb, feel that. If your heart is excited and turned on, feel that. But really include that dimension of yourself, very tender, emotional, psychological dimension of yourself. Take a breath, feel it in your chest, feel it in your body. Let yourself feel your heart, your mind, and your sex center together. Right? For sexual healing, these are all going to have to come together. And we're building towards an exercise, but we need to have all these channels open. And what we're doing tonight is we're bringing sexual energy, that vital energy, to healing. Right? The alchemy of sexual healing, how vital energy of sex transforms our life. And we're not talking about it academically. We're interested in it happening right now, and we're doing it together right now, and we're doing it right with you. Feel your pelvis, feel your sex center, feel your heart. All right, because when sex meets healing, I love that so many people wrote whole, becoming whole. What I have in my outline is when sex meets healing, you become whole. Because healing is all about being whole, and sex is the part of us that's usually denied and left out, but it's the vital energy. So when you bring that vital energy, the part that's really left out, the fuel, if you will.
I remember back when it was maybe 6 months after Erwan and I had met, and we were dating, and he was teaching this course called the Pleasure Course. So I said to him, hey, I want to see what this is that you're teaching. Can I come to the course? So I went to the course, and something that I had been working on for so long in therapy and workshops and things like that was this challenge I had around communicating in romantic relationships. I really was scared to ask for what I wanted, or to say when I was angry or I didn't like something. I had these blocks, and I really wanted to heal from whatever it was that was keeping me from being able to say what I wanted and how I felt. I was really working on this healing. A lot of you can probably relate. Working on issues, right? So I come to visit the Pleasure Course. I was thinking, I'm just going to watch and see what Erwan does. But no, I get there and I'm in the course. It's okay, here's your seat. I'm in the course with everybody else. And so we were doing all sorts of guided meditations and feeling into our bodies and learning about sex and orgasm. And there was this moment where we were bringing to mind a challenge that we have. So I'm okay, my challenge I'm working on, communication, I don't know. And then I felt into my vital center and into my genitals, and I felt all this pleasure and buzzy feeling. And then all of a sudden it was like a fountain open, and something exploded through me energetically. And I was like, whoa. And suddenly I felt free. Like that issue that I had around communication and I can't, and it was totally different. And I felt freed up in a way that I never had before. It was so interesting. When I contacted that vital energy, it propelled something in me to open and free up. And that's the power of sexual energy.